There is a moment in every person's financial life where everything stops making sense, where the prayers have been prayed and the work has been done and the sacrifice has been made, and still, somehow, the money does not stay. Still, the gap appears at the end of every month. Still, the breakthrough arrives at the door and somehow never quite enters. Still, the life you can feel in your bones was prepared for you remains hovering just beyond the edge of what your hands can reach. And in that moment, most people make the most expensive mistake of their entire financial existence. They conclude that something is wrong with them, that they are cursed or forgotten or simply not meant for more than this. They do not know, because nobody ever told them, that nothing is wrong with them, that the supply was never the problem, that the law was never against them, that the only thing standing between where they are and everything that was prepared for their name is the knowledge of 10 specific spiritual laws that have been governing their financial life since the day they were born, working perfectly, executing faithfully, responding to every signal they sent without a single exception, and producing with complete precision exactly what those signals commanded, not what they wanted, what they commanded, without knowing they were commanding anything at all. Florence Scovel Shinn spent her life uncovering these laws and writing them down in plain language for anyone willing to receive them. She said the game of life is played on a spiritual field, and the rules of that field do not change for anyone, not for the educated or the uneducated, not for the faithful or the faithless, not for the wealthy or the desperately poor. The laws operate the same way for every human being without exception. The only difference between the person who lives in abundance and the person who lives in lack is not intelligence, not opportunity, not favor, not luck. It is knowledge, the knowledge of which laws are in operation and how to work with them rather than against them. That knowledge is what you are receiving tonight, and once you have it, you cannot unhave it. Once these 10 laws become the operating framework of your financial life, nothing will ever be the same again. The first law is the law of the spoken word, and it is the foundation upon which every other law in this teaching rests. Shinn said your word is your wand, not your intention, not your desire, not your prayer sent silently into empty air. Your word, the spoken declaration, the voiced command, the sentence spoken with authority that goes out into the invisible field that surrounds every human life and begins immediately rearranging the invisible to match what was declared. This is not poetry. This is not metaphor borrowed from ancient wisdom to make the hopeless feel better. This is law, operating in your life right now with the same faithful consistency that gravity operates in the physical world. Whether you believe in gravity or not, the apple falls. Whether you believe in the law of the spoken word or not, your words are commanding your financial reality into form every single day. The question is never whether the law is working. The question is only whether you are working with it deliberately or against it accidentally. Most people are working against it accidentally. Not because they are foolish, but because they were never taught that every sentence they speak about money is a command. Every time you say money is tight, you command it to tighten further. Every time you say I cannot afford, that you command the state of not being able to afford to become more deeply embedded in your subconscious. Every time you say things never work out for me financially, you hand the most powerful builder you possess a blueprint for more of the same. The subconscious receives every word as literal instruction. It does not evaluate. It does not protect you from yourself. It builds what it was given, faithfully, completely, without rest. The reversal begins with a single decision: to stop speaking the old commands and begin speaking new ones. Not in moments of inspiration only, but consistently. Not on days when the evidence supports it, but especially on days when the evidence contradicts it, because the law does not respond to evidence. It responds to the word, and the word spoken with authority in the face of contradictory evidence carries more power than any declaration made in a moment when everything is already going well. This is the first law, the law that activates every other law on this list. Speak the word. Speak it deliberately. Speak it as one who understands that their tongue is a creative instrument of divine precision. And begin today. The second law is the law of divine supply. Shinn wrote that there is a supply for every demand, but the demand must be made correctly. Not from the place of desperation that says, I need this, and I cannot see how it will come, and the evidence is against me, and time is running out. From the place of authority that says the supply is already prepared, and already moving, and already finding its way to me through channels I may not yet be able to see. The difference between these two positions is not emotional, it is vibrational, and the law of divine supply responds to vibration with complete precision. Desperation carries the frequency of lack. Authority carries the frequency of alignment, and the supply can only flow to the frequency that matches it. Think of a radio. The music exists whether you can hear it or not. It is broadcasting at all times from all directions. But you can only receive what you are tuned to. The frequency of your receiver must match the frequency of the transmission, or the signal does not come through. The field of divine supply is broadcasting abundance at all times in all directions toward every human life without exception. But most people are tuned to the frequency of lack. Their thoughts, their words, their subconscious beliefs are all broadcasting on the channel of not enough. And the supply, which is infinite and available and ready to flow, simply cannot reach a receiver that is not tuned to its frequency. This is not punishment. It is law, the most neutral and consistent law in existence. And the moment you retune the receiver, the supply begins to flow. Not gradually, immediately. Because the supply was never absent, only the alignment was. The third law is the law of the vacuum. And this is the law that most people find the most uncomfortable because it requires an act of trust that feels like loss before it becomes gain. Shinn said, nature abhors a vacuum. She meant that when you release what is no longer serving you, when you let go of the old to make room for the new, the universe rushes to fill the empty space with something better. Always something better. The problem is that most people hold on. They hold on to circumstances they have outgrown because those circumstances feel safe in their familiarity. They hold on to financial habits that produce lack because those habits are known and the unknown feels dangerous. They hold on to relationships and situations and ways of operating that block the new supply from entering because the idea of releasing them before the replacement is visible feels too much like losing. The law of the vacuum demands that you trust the invisible before it becomes visible. It demands that you release the insufficient to receive the sufficient, that you let go of the small to receive the large, that you create the space before the filling rather than waiting for the filling before you create the space. This is not irresponsible. It is the precise mechanics of how divine supply enters a life. Shinn documented case after case of people who released what was insufficient, who created the vacuum with deliberate faith rather than desperate loss, and watched the universe fill that space with provision that exceeded what they had released in every way. This is the third law, and it operates for everyone who is willing to trust the invisible enough to release the insufficient. The fourth law is the law of divine selection, which means what is yours by divine right cannot be taken from you, and what is not yours cannot be forced into your life no matter how hard you pursue it. Shinn said, no one can take your place in the divine plan. Every person has a specific supply that carries their name, specific opportunities that were designed for their particular set of gifts, specific doors that will only open for them. And the tragedy of most financial lives is not that the supply was withheld, but that the person spent their energy pursuing what belonged to someone else, while their own divine supply waited untouched. This law brings an extraordinary peace when you truly understand it. You do not need to compete. You do not need to compare. You do not need to take from someone else to have enough for yourself. The universe is not operating from a finite supply that must be divided among an infinite number of claimants. It is operating from infinite supply that has been specifically and precisely allocated. Your portion was prepared before you were born. It has your name on it, and your only work is to align with it, to claim it, to speak it into the visible with the authority of one who knows that what is mine will come to me and what is not mine will go to its rightful owner. and the divine plan will be served perfectly in both directions. The fifth law is the law of forgiveness, and you may not expect to find it on a list of financial laws, but Shinn placed it here deliberately. She said resentment is a wall that blocks prosperity. Not metaphorically, literally. The energy of unforgiveness creates a vibrational barrier that prevents the frequency of supply from reaching the life of the person who carries it. Every grudge held against someone who wronged you financially is a brick in a wall that you built around your own abundance. Every replay of betrayal or injustice or loss that ended in bitterness is a declaration of poverty made at the subconscious level with more emotional charge than almost any conscious declaration could carry. The financial act of forgiveness is not about the person who wronged you. It is about your own channel of supply. It is about removing the wall that your bitterness built around your own abundance. It is about releasing the toxic vibrational charge that has been blocking the flow of divine supply toward your life. Shinn said to forgive everyone for everything always and watch what opens financially, not as a spiritual ideal, but as a practical financial instruction. The wall comes down, the channel opens, the supply flows. This is the fifth law, and it is one of the most powerful financial shifts available to any human being willing to make it. The sixth law is the law of divine timing, which states that your supply will arrive at the exact moment it is needed and not one moment before. Not because the universe is indifferent to your urgency, but because divine timing operates from a perspective that the conscious mind cannot access, a perspective that sees the full picture, that knows which door needs to open first to make the second door accessible. That understands which preparation is still in progress to ensure that when the supply arrives, you will be able to hold it rather than lose it immediately, as has happened before. Shinn said, God is never late. And this declaration, spoken with genuine faith in moments of apparent delay, is itself an act of alignment with the law of divine timing. When you speak it, you are not pretending that the pressure is not real. You are declaring that the law is more real than the pressure. You are choosing to tune your receiver to the frequency of divine supply rather than the frequency of anxiety. And that choice, made in the face of apparent delay, is precisely the vibrational act that accelerates the arrival of what has been prepared. The seventh law is the law of activity. Shinn said faith without works is dead. And she did not mean that you must work yourself into exhaustion to earn what the law will deliver. She meant that when the divine supply begins to move toward you, it will present itself in the form of an impression, an idea, a nudge toward a specific action that the conscious mind might dismiss as too small or too obvious or unrelated to the supply you need. The law of activity requires that you act on those impressions immediately, without waiting for logical confirmation, without needing to see how this small step connects to the large outcome. The action taken in faith is the key that turns in the lock. The supply was already there. The action was never the cause of the supply. It was the demonstration of the alignment that allowed the supply to be received. The eighth law is the law of non-resistance, which Shinn considered one of the most powerful and most difficult of all the spiritual laws governing prosperity. She said what you resist persists, and she meant this in the most literal financial sense. Every time you fight against your current circumstances with the energy of anger or despair or desperate force, you are declaring those circumstances to be more powerful than the law that governs supply. Every time you rail against lack with the energy of someone who believes the lack is real and the supply is questionable, you are strengthening the frequency of lack and weakening the alignment with supply. The law of non-resistance does not mean passive acceptance of poverty as a permanent condition. It means the radical spiritual act of refusing to give your creative power to what you do not want, of withdrawing the energy of attention and emotion from the circumstance of lack and redirecting it toward the truth of divine supply. Not in denial of what is, but in declaration of what is more true. Shinn said, let go and let God. And this instruction, which sounds passive, is actually the most powerful financial act available to a human being, the releasing of resistance. the withdrawal of the fighting energy from the problem and the placement of that same energy into faith in the supply. That shift, made in the deepest layers of the subconscious, is what the law of non-resistance produces. And the supply that was being blocked by the resistance flows in with a speed that consistently astonishes the person who finally lets it. The 9th law is the law of expectation. Shinn said man receives only what he expects in his heart, not what he hopes for, not what he prays for in desperation, what he expects in his heart. What his deepest level of belief says is realistic. What his subconscious accepts as the operating truth of his financial life. And this law reveals precisely why so many prayers are spoken and so few are answered in the way that was asked. Because the prayer was spoken from the surface, while the expectation at the depth contradicted every word. The supply responds to the depth, not the surface, always. The work of the law of expectation is the work of upgrading the expectation, not through willpower or positive thinking alone, but through the consistent practice of speaking truth to the subconscious at the moments of maximum receptivity until the deeper level of belief shifts to match the declared truth. Until the expectation in the heart becomes aligned with the supply that was always prepared. And when that alignment is achieved, the law of expectation does what it has always done for everyone who has ever achieved genuine financial transformation. It delivers exactly what the heart now expects. With the same precision, it previously delivered exactly what the heart expected before. The 10th law is the law of love. And Shinn placed this last because she understood it as the law that governs all the others. She said love is the fulfilling of the law. Not romantic love, not sentimental affection, the love that sees abundance in another's life and rejoices rather than envies. The love that blesses the person who has what you want rather than begrudging them the possession of it. The love that understands that every demonstration of abundance anywhere in the world is evidence of the infinite supply available to everyone. Evidence that it is possible. Evidence that the law works. Evidence that your turn is not prevented by their success, but is actually confirmed by it. Envy is one of the most financially destructive frequencies a human being can carry. Shinn said, when you envy another's good, you cut off your own supply, because envy declares that abundance is limited, and someone else having it means you cannot. And the law, receiving that declaration, delivers more experience of limited abundance to the life of the one who holds it. Love reverses the declaration. Love says their abundance is proof of my abundance. Their breakthrough is confirmation of my breakthrough. Their open door is evidence of the doors that are opening for me. And the law, receiving that declaration, begins arranging the conditions for precisely that to be true. These are the 10 laws: the law of the spoken word, the law of divine supply, the law of the vacuum, the law of divine selection, the law of forgiveness, the law of divine timing, the law of activity, the law of non-resistance, the law of expectation, and the law of love. 10 laws that have been governing your financial life since the day you were born. 10 laws that Florence Scovel Shinn spent her life documenting so that you would not have to spend yours discovering them by accident. 10 laws that are operating in your life right now with perfect consistency and complete precision. The only question that remains is the same question it has always been. Are you working with them or against them? Are you speaking the word of abundance or the word of lack? Are you creating the vacuum or hoarding the insufficient? Are you forgiving the wall down or holding the bitterness up? Are you trusting the timing or fighting the delay? Are you acting on the impression or waiting for the guarantee? Are you releasing the resistance or fighting the circumstance? Are you raising the expectation or accepting the limitation? Are you blessing the abundance of others or envying it? Are you operating in the love that fulfills the law or the fear that blocks it? Beginning today, the answer to every one of those questions changes, because you now know what you did not know before. And knowledge received in genuine faith is itself a declaration to the subconscious, a signal to the field, a command to the faithful servant that has been waiting for new instruction. The supply that was always prepared for your name is already in motion. The channels that were always available to you are already opening. The law that was always on your side was simply waiting for you to understand it well enough to work with it. Now you do. Now it begins, not someday. Not when the circumstances agree. Not when the evidence arrives to justify the faith. Now, in this breath, in this moment, in this declaration spoken with the authority of one who has just received the knowledge that changes everything. I now align with the 10 spiritual laws of divine supply. My word commands my financial destiny. My channel is open. My supply is flowing. My good is on its way, and nothing in heaven or on earth can stop what the law has already set in motion for my life. Speak it, mean it, hold it, and watch what the 10 laws deliver to a life that finally understands the rules of the game it was always meant to win.